Hello and welcome to Dragonflower Gardens. Today we are at Midgarden Farms. We're going to go ahead and take a look. Ah, there he is. There's our gardener. How's it going?
Good, how's it going? Midgarden Farm, we started here in this location as an urban farm, and just with the idea starting off to like feed our own families, right, with surplus,
Right.
and then have more, you know.
Yes.
And then like we figured out pretty quick that we could grow enough to sell, you know, for production also.
Wow, that's great.
And so, so like part of my philosophy is I think it's important to have an abundance of food, right?
Yes.
Access to food,
Yes.
and then actual first-hand experience with your food, and or at least with the people who are providing your food.
Right, you want to know where it's coming from and who's growing it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think too many people there's too much disconnection with that, and what comes with that is a disconnection with community.
Yes.
And so one thing we're doing with community is, like, for example, this is me and my sister started this, and the other family is involved, right? Heavily involved. And
So
they put in
sister,
a lot of hours.
You got extended family
Yeah.
and friends, and you're
Yeah.
all coming together
Yeah.
to, grow abundance
Right.
of good, nutritious food to
Absolutely.
feed the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the first step if you're going to create community is start with your family and
I agree.
reconnect.
Yes.
With your family, extended family, friends of family, people you grow up that you call family. You know what I mean?
Right.
All those people.
That's right.
So if you have excess or you can grow abundance, then that's like a good starting point.
That is a very good starting point.
And so, like, if I can grow my own food, I can say no to a lot more things.
That's right. If you can grow your own food, you can say no to a lot more things.
Yeah.
How did you start out? What was your method here once you got the land and you're like, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do it?
Yeah.
So this is an urban farm.
Yep.
And you guys are renting this land.
Yeah.
Okay. So once that all finalized and you're like, hey, check it out, we got a talent for growing food. We need to bring our community together. Let's go after it. Let's run. We're going to do this. What did you do first here? How did you get from grass to this?
So the first thing we did is we did a method where we took lots of cardboard and just laid out cardboard over the whole garden area.
Right.
And so I think it's like right now probably about close to 2,000 square feet of garden area.
2,000 square feet. That's pretty good size. Yeah.
I mean, it's not all growing right now, but that's what we have fenced in our front.
Right. That's what you have for production.
Yeah. So we laid down cardboard, and then we brought in like, I can't remember, it was like 15 yards maybe, or 10 to 15 yards of topsoil.
Topsoil.
Right. Well,
okay.
Compost.
Compost
right?
and topsoil together.
Yep, from Bailey's Compost
Okay.
and Snohomish. And so we had that delivered, and they dropped it off in like 2 big piles, and then we wheelbarrowed it into position, and they made our rows, right?
Wheelbarrowed it in position, and then made your rows.
Yep. And so, and then we had probably about the same amount of wood chips delivered.
Wood chips.
So
Where'd you get them wood chips at then?
The wood chips were delivered they're like random landscaping companies.
Okay.
So like they have to go pay to dump the wood chips somewhere if they don't already have a spot.
Oh.
So they'll just come here and dump wood chips for free.
Well, that's great. That's a good resource. If they're going to dump them anyway, and we need them for gardening to get our soil built up.
Yep. We're all doing each other a favor, basically.
Yes, we are all doing each other.
Symbiotic relationship.
Love that.
So we made the walkways with the wood chips, with the idea that the wood chips would help with weed suppression.
Yes, did it work?
And it works to varying degrees, right? So it's a combination of the cardboard underneath and the wood chips on top does keep most of the weeds down. You get some little spots where they still find their way up.
Okay.
Life just does that. But
yeah, doesn't it though?
But yeah, for the most part, it did work. I don't think so. There are some changes to my system that I'd like to do next season, at a new place, right? So we're gonna keep this
Yes.
place, but we're looking to expand next season.
Oh, looking to
So
expand. Love that.
there's definitely some learning lessons that we got here, and some changes that I'll be making. So like the wood chips are nice to make nice, organized. You can definitely see your walkways and your paths.
Right.
But I like to walk barefoot, and so it's not so awesome when you want to walk barefoot in your garden,
Right.
right? Because it would
Feel
be nice.
that earth underneath your
Yeah,
feet.
yeah. You know, it's summertime, and like you got flip flops and shorts on. You come out here and work for a couple hours, right?
Right.
And it'd be nice just to walk around barefoot sometimes, and that's not really an option with wood chips. So,
Right.
but it is nice. So wood chips will help over the long term build up soil, right?
Right.
And so you don't want to put them down where you're going to grow right away, because wood is mostly carbon, and carbon bonds with nitrogen.
Right.
And
Yes.
so when you want the nitrogen feeding your plants, if you have wood chips or wood mixed in with where your plants actually are,
Right.
it's competing for that nitrogen.
Right.
And you don't want it to compete for nitrogen. But in the walkways, if it's a system that, if I was going to continue to use this, it will break down over time,
Right.
right? And so it does add to the fertility of the soil and the structure of the soil, most importantly, because we operate on a no-till system,
No-till.
or at the very least a very low-till system,
Okay.
right? So that's another thing I would change for next year. So on a small place, a small garden this is actually a very large garden.
Yeah.
But,
No, this is great. This is a pretty good sized garden.
putting down cardboard is a great way for weed suppression, so that you don't, because we're not going to spray anything.
Right.
Right, so we're not going to spray anything. We're not going to use any unnatural methods. So that's a good, low cost, but high in man hours. Right,
Right,
it costs
yes.
you in time.
Sure.
Right, laying down the cardboard. So while it is a good method, and for a small area it works, right? But for a larger area, I would probably till first.
Till.
Right, or rototill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to soften the ground.
Get that top.
Yeah,
you know.
and then from there on, once my beds and my walkways are established, then I would just use a tilter, which only gets like the top, like inch or inch and a half of the soil, so it's not destroying the structure of the soil.
So you went with a back to Eden type of style, and as your learning had progressed, you had realized there were certain changes you would like to make.
Yeah.
When you start a new garden and expand.
Yeah, especially when we scale up, because there's some things that we will repeat, but we'll just repeat them in a different way.
Right.
Right. And so I do like the soil here. I can just bury my hand right in it. Right. So we just laid down the compost and then just never touched it again. We planted in it. Right.
Right.
And so the structure is very good. The microbiology in the soil is probably really good.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's something I'd like to repeat.
So what did you plant here in this?
Yeah, so we planted right here. This is where I planted tomatoes.
Tomatoes. No
So
way.
that's
Tomato farmer. That's why we're out here talking to him.
Yeah, so we planted. I've got 5 rows right here in this one little zone,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, we're in the thick of your tomato forest.
yeah, we have like just over 200 plants.
200 plants.
Yeah.
And up in this
tomatoes.
area, have you had an issue with 200 plants just in tomatoes?
In tomatoes.
In
yeah.
tomatoes.
Just tomato plants.
In this area, have you had an issue with the weather? Because here we don't usually have our tomatoes go so great.
Yeah, so I would say early this season, we got to a late start in the summer.
Yes.
And so
Really wet at the beginning
it was
of the
wet,
season.
it was cold.
Yes,
So
very cold.
we expected the last frost to be, I think it was like 7th April or something like that. So we waited till probably the 20th or so of April, and maybe it was somewhere in there, and then we planted like
20th of April. Hold up. That's like, we usually plant somewhere around like the 1st, between the 5th. That's like 2 weeks.
yeah.
That's
So
a 2 weeks difference.
we tried to
normally.
take the projected last frost date, and then go behind that by a couple weeks just to be safe.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it still wasn't safe.
And it
'cause
still wasn't.
It was cold this late spring, early summer.
Yeah.
So the plants that we planted didn't do so hot, but luckily my sister, she always plants extra plants, right?
Oh,
to
smart.
account for this kind of thing. So we have redundancy in our system.
All right, tell me about your companion planting. No, what do you got in here?
Okay, let's start with the marigolds. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to plant was marigolds. So marigolds are important to the protection of roots and the soil, right? Because what happens underneath the soil is that the marigold plant is releasing a toxin that specifically kills nematodes. And so nematodes are little critters that are microscopic, and they latch on to the roots of the plant. And as they do, they start to take resources from the plant that they're latched onto in the form of moisture and other macro and micronutrients. And the plant suffers as a result. So I want maximum production for my tomatoes, but I don't want to come in here and spray things and use pesticides and kill everything. It's just not part of my philosophy. So what I have to do is I have to use a natural process, right? Nature has provided answers. So the marigold is one of them. So they're protecting the tomato plants underneath the soil from nematodes. So the nematodes will either be killed off by the toxin released by the marigold, or they will end up latching onto the marigold root as well, like as a trap, almost like a trap crop, right? And when they do, it will kill them. And if it doesn't kill them, it also has an added benefit of if they live, it destroys their reproductive process. So they can't make any more nematodes. By interplanting marigolds, I kind of overdid it a little bit, as you can see, but I staggered the marigolds. So every couple tomato plants, there's a marigold on either side. And so just to get the maximum benefit of protecting the tomato plants, which is what their job is, right? So the next plant I planted was chives. So every other tomato plant, there's chives, which I also let go to flower. So the chives repel aphids, and they don't like the smell. And then when it goes to flower, it also attracts other types of pollinators. And so I want as many pollinators, different varieties of pollinators in here as possible. The chives I planted in between the tomatoes, right? So in between each plant. So they also have a dual purpose. The primary purpose is that chives will prevent aphids, right? Aphids, yeah. And the other thing that we wanted pollinators in here, because tomatoes can have a tough time. They self-pollinate, right? So it's like by coming through and kind of shaking them, that will help. The wind will blow the pollen around, but having pollinators come in and do the job for you is really beneficial. So these bright orange flowers really attract all kinds of insects. So we have an abundance of bumblebees, honeybees, hoverflies, butterflies. We have all kinds of pollinators that come through here. So, and it's amazing. Like, I'm just walking through here and I'm not even worried about bumblebees or honeybees. They're like, it's like you brush right past them. And that old fear, like when you're a kid, oh, it's gonna sting me.
Yeah.
It's just like non-existent. They are just around me constantly all day. So there's spiders galore in here. Everything you need is in balance, right?
That's the idea of it.
So
building a nice ecosystem for not only our pollinators and other things in the gardens, but for us, right?
Yeah, just to increase that abundancy of life and biodiversity. Okay, so the third plant is basil, also going to flower. So it's getting a little wild in here right now, and I'm actually starting to cut some things back. But the basil, whereas the marigolds protects the plants from nematodes and the chives protect them from aphids, the basil protects the tomato plants from tomato hornworm. So so the hornworm doesn't like the smell of the basil, and then we let it go to flower, and it also attracts more pollinators. I planted basil. I let them all go to flower.
Here's a basil.
Yep, that's a basil.
It smells
too.
so good. I know you guys can't smell it right now, but it smells so good.
Prune a little, because that needs to happen. Okay, so what do you want to know about these?
What do you got in the basket?
I've got Chef's Choice orange tomatoes.
Oh, those are gorgeous.
Yeah. So, and then they're out of place because this row is my super sweet 100 row, and that is this variety of cherry tomatoes. As you can see, grows very abundantly.
Nice.
So
Those are
red.
bite-sized, delicious morsels.
Yeah, so I had an empty spot, and I think I planted this there to fill in the spot.
There you go.
Extra plant. I might have put it there by accident. I don't know. I've got one out of place plant. I've got my brandywines that I just harvested, and I harvest about this much once a week at least.
You harvest about this much once a week?
Yeah.
And how many pounds do you think you've harvested this year?
This year we've harvested almost 1,000 pounds total.
1,000 pounds?
Tomatoes, yeah.
Of tomatoes?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
1,000 pounds of tomatoes, you're so cool. Look at that. Oh wow, look at that. How are you stringing these up?
Okay, so I've got 9-foot T-posts that I put into the ground, and then I've attached a half-inch conduit as the top bar going all the way across. And then to trellis them, I put on zip ties, and I use these tomato hooks that have, these come with like, I think it's like 10 feet of line on it. And then I will clip the whole plant in at least 2, maybe 3 places. And as the plant continues to grow up, I'll just take the bottom clip off and add it to the top and clip up the plant a little bit higher. And as I need to, I'll just lower the line so the plant can keep growing up taller. And as you can see, I've leaned the plants to the side at an angle, right? So as they grow taller, and here's a good example right here, they're starting to grow up taller than the top bar. And so what I want to do, and what I have been doing, is I'll just let out a little bit more of this line here and lower the plant a little bit, and then re-clip it up to give it support. And so that'll give me a little bit more growing time out of it in this particular location. So these tomato plants are a variety of, they're indeterminate plants, so they will continue to grow until the weather makes them stop, either through lack of sunlight or through cold. If we lived in a warmer climate, or if we had a greenhouse, and we could create the conditions we want, these plants would just continue to grow and grow and get taller and taller and taller, and continue to produce tomatoes.
What's this one?
Okay, so these are black beauties. So they're really interesting. So they grow. They start off, they actually look black, but then as they mature, they get more ripe. They start to turn purple, especially on the bottom like the blossom is.
They'll start out black and then they'll turn purple,
and they start
like
to get
this?
progressively purple. Yeah, so they're really
Wow.
really pretty tomato.
Where did you source your seeds from? Baker Creek?
Yeah, Baker Creek seeds.
So
yeah.
all of these are heirloom seeds.
Yeah, so
You'll be able to
not all of the tomatoes in the garden are heirloom,
Okay.
but so we have a number of heirloom varieties. We probably grow like 5 or 6 heirloom varieties, and then we have several cherry and then hybrid slicers, etc. But we have a bunch of heirlooms. Yeah.
Are you seed saving your heirloom seeds?
That's not something I'm working on this year. Oh, my sister, she might work on that, because she's a little bit more interested in saving seeds than I am.
Okay.
And because it's just a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
And so,
yeah, it is.
So, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I really like the idea, but I just don't have the time to put into saving seeds right now.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it is a good idea. It's good practice.
So where can the people find you?
So, okay, so my farm's called Midgarden Farm, and right now we're on Facebook at Midgarden Farm. And we also have a farm stand on 112th Street and 4th Street in Everett. And then also a farm stand off of Highway 530 in Arlington, right off the exit.
Thank you for watching Dragonflower Gardens today. And if you got any value out of today's content, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. And if you wish to know next time we're getting ready to drop a video, you're gonna wanna go ahead and hit that bell button. And remember to keep on growing.